While connected technology is essential for unlocking new efficiencies on the production floor, it's also presented hackers with new opportunities to steal valuable IP and data. To support OT professionals in their battle with cyber criminals, we launched the Security Breach podcast. In each of our over 100 episodes, we've brought in cybersecurity specialists to provide valuable insights and break down critical topics. As a go-to podcast for our listeners, we want to help you align your brand with our expertise. By sponsoring our podcast, your brand will build trust and your message will stand out to an audience searching for tools to assist their cybersecurity efforts. Secure your share in this rapidly growing segment by sponsoring Security Breach. Contact us today to learn more. Hi, I'm Jeff Ranke, Editorial Director of Manufacturing.net and Manufacturing Business Technology. Welcome to Security Breach. We've all seen or heard the reports about how hackers are using AI to elevate their attacks in obtaining funds, intellectual property, or access to critical systems from unsuspecting victims. Often, these nightmare incidents leave the names and companies out of the story to avoid any reputational fallout. But today's guest takes us beyond studies and secondhand accounts of AI's potential in the hands of hackers. I'm not going to say too much, but I do hope that after listening to Ryan LaSalle's up-close and personal encounter with a North Korean scammer, you'll appreciate the need to take all that threat intelligence regarding AI and foreign black hat operations very seriously. It's my pleasure to welcome Ryan LaSalle, CEO of the human risk management company Nisos, to Security Breach. Well, Ryan, hey, thanks for taking the time and welcome to Security Breach.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Jeff.
Well, I'm excited to talk about this because we hear a lot of stories and different reports about AI and deepfakes and some of these things that are going on. You have a very unique perspective. You guys were involved with this very closely. So I'd love to hear your story sort of start to finish in terms of how you came across this situation and how you resolved it.
I think, so I think you're talking about a North Korean worker that we ran an operation on last year, and it's been quite a whirlwind actually. I think it's been one of the most interesting operations I've ever been a part of in my career, and it was like following along in a detective movie or something as we were doing this. So I'll just give you a little bit of background. Nisos has been involved in helping our clients uncover North Korean remote IT worker fraud in their companies for since 2023. I mean, we've done some of the earliest investigations that I know of, and along the way we've been publishing about this. We've been luckily some of our clients were okay with us publishing the techniques we uncovered, the stories, because it was novel to the community. And I think as we went on, we started finding that their tactics were evolving quite a bit. We've continued to publish on research for seeing the same kind of scams being run in the U.S., starting to affect other countries as well, including Japan. We found more mature tactics like front companies that end up providing a level of legitimacy to the workers. So it was pretty surprising to us when last summer when we were advertising for a role for our company, and our CTO joined a call that the guy on the other side was pretty clearly not the person they purported to be. The person was much younger than the years of experience in the resume, by decades younger. Like
wow.
That was the first real tell. And then along the way, some of the things that get into like how the North Korean IT workers are using AI started to come to the fore in the interview. And so, it wasn't a story of deepfakes, but it was 100% a story of AI aiding in the adoption of a different persona, in the purpose-generated resume that worked exactly with our job description, and then most interestingly, in helping them get through the interview. It was clear they were using some sort of co-pilot prompting service. As we would ask questions, they would wait for it to catch up and then they would answer. reading off of another screen. And as we got more into this, it became more apparent. So as the story goes on, if you don't want me to tell there's lots of steps to the story, but we realized pretty quickly that he was not who he said he was. We decided that we would run this as an operation. We hired him as a contractor. We sent him one of our laptops, and then we started recording what he was doing. So it was a huge source of intelligence for us. We worked closely with law enforcement to make sure the things we were doing were above board. Our laptop went to a laptop farm in Florida, not a real legitimate person's home. It was someone who was housing multiple laptops in their house, and they remoted in from their location, which we believe was in China. So the whole time we were sitting there watching what he was doing, learning how he was using, what he was doing, how he was applying to jobs, because he started doing it on our laptop. It was fascinating, and it was a huge treasure trove of intelligence for us and for the community.
Yeah. So you posted a really cool report on this, and we'll link to that in the description of the episode. Going back just a little bit, you said that there were some red flags right away. And I think some of our listeners are going to be like, well, this is a security company. They would spot these things more easily, potentially. This would be on their radar more quickly. To somebody who's not, sort of has your background, what are some things that they could also maybe identify easily in terms of setting off some alarms here?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most interesting parts about this is that HR and recruiting are the first line of defense here. It isn't the security team. But yes, I think partly our training and our knowledge of this space helped us identify them faster. The first thing we see is when we get the resume. And looking at the person, looking at their bio, looking at their online persona, things don't tend to add up. The first is that the resume is too good to be true. It is exactly tailored to your job description. They use local open source LLMs on their own laptops and generate resumes to the persona that they're looking for, and then they adopt that persona. The LinkedIn profiles are generally out of step with their years of service. In this case, this guy had like a 15-year work history and a LinkedIn profile that was from just a few months before. Okay. Their phone numbers tend to be synthetic. They're voice over IP phone numbers. They're not anyone's cell phone number. They're not legit, and they have a heavy use of VPN software. So often the one that we've seen a lot, and I think others have published about it, is a product called Astral VPN. But we see that their source IP addresses tend to come from VPNs. Those are all super technical, and those aren't things that recruiters tend to pick up on. But a lot of the stuff about the resume, the resume and the persona, they do.
Absolutely.
In the interview, there's another lot of red flags. I mentioned this co-pilot. The AI is getting good, but it's still not good enough for them to not have to kill time between the time you ask a question and the time they answer it. So we have seen that was a red flag. And then personal questions are tough. Telling personal experiences, talking about the place they're in right then and there, it starts to set up a lot of red flags for people who are used to having just a one-on-one conversation with somebody like a recruiter would be. If they can't answer basic questions about their home, their neighborhood, the weather, that kind of stuff, it starts to set off some of those red flag indicators.
Yeah, you even threw kind of a red herring in there, right? Talking about was it a hurricane or something that had gone through, and they had no real understanding of what you were talking about. So
yeah, I think if the person supposed to live in Florida, when you live in Florida, you know the names of every hurricane that are hitting you in that season, right? Yeah. And that hurricane was like 15 years ago, so it was a little bit of a trying to see how they reacted. I don't think that was dispositive by itself. But it was just one more of those things that said, yeah, this person is not who they say they are.
Yeah. So once you came across this, you knew this was not genuine applicant here for the position. Why did you want to sort of go this next step and do some more investigating to really find out what was going on?
It was a big conversation. I mean, we our whole leadership team got together to decide to do this because it's kind of risky to say we're going to send our laptop to this known threat actor. We're going to give them our stuff and we're going to see what happens. And it was a little bit, it was a little bit harrowing. Again, we brought in, our lawyer was involved. We brought in some help from law enforcement who gave us some guidance on what we checked what we were doing along the way to make sure we weren't doing something afoul. But essentially, it was our equipment, and so we can monitor our people and our equipment. And so we instrumented it with a bunch of surveillance ware and went to see what we could do. The thought there all along was, how often do you get to see the inside of one of these operations? It's really infrequent. We felt it was too good to pass up.
So talk to us a little bit about these farms. This is something that maybe a lot of people, because we're in the industrial sector here, not something we hear a lot about, but still North Korean hackers are definitely targeting OT infrastructure as well. Talk to us about the makeup of these and what do they mean? What are they trying to accomplish?
Yeah, the idea behind the laptop farms, and there's all various different ways these people are getting recruited. But the idea is that someone in the U.S. is providing a legitimate address for you to ship the laptop to. Now, by the way, another red flag is after you hire the person and you're like, hey, we'll onboard you. Where do you want your laptop shipped? They'll say, oh, I'm visiting my mom at such and such address. She's sick and I can't get home. Can you just send it to there and I'll get it there? Or what? They'll give a legitimate excuse, but changing the address that's between what's on their resume and where they want the laptop sent, that's going to a facilitator. And these facilitators get a cut of the payroll that you're paying the person, and they're of various levels of aid and support. Some of them are just literally plugging the laptop in or putting it on their broadband, putting it on their home Wi-Fi, and plugging in a remote connection to the guy in North Korea and then stepping away. They don't do anything else. Others actually help them do other things. They'll support identity theft and credential theft. They'll pass drug tests. They'll do all kinds of stuff on behalf of the people, all for a cut of money. Many do not know that they're helping North Korea. They know they're not doing something right, but they don't know there's something that wrong. There was a case last week. The FBI indicted 2 guys in New Jersey, I think. Those cases, when you read those, are very extreme. Those people traveled to China. They knew exactly what they were doing, who they were working for as brokers. But most of the people are just people who are trying to make a buck. They're looking for like gig jobs on Reddit. They're looking for payday loans on Reddit. They're looking for whatever, and they get enlisted into these things to help out. But so we think there are hundreds of these homes around the U.S.
Incredible. What do you think the attacker, or the fake applicant was trying to accomplish here? What was his end game? Was it just a paycheck, or was there more to it than that?
Yeah, his end game was a paycheck. We saw through our monitoring of him that he was applying to hundreds of jobs, thousands of jobs a week, and that his full-time job was applying for jobs. And then once he interviewed and got a job, their goal is to hang on to that job as long as they can and pull that payroll offshore through a banking infrastructure that allows them to turn it into crypto and move it back to North Korea. They get a cut. The people and the facilitators get a cut. Everybody gets a cut along the way, but at the end of the day, they're trying to move money back. We've seen other North Korean IT workers who have a different goal in mind, especially if the thing they're targeting is a financial fintech or crypto company. They'll look for more. They'll look to plant backdoors. They'll look for IP theft. But that wasn't the team we were in. Was just looking for payroll laundering.
Okay. Do these tend to be like private groups? Are these government-backed type organizations? What's been your experience with who these folks are?
Yeah, I will say that one of the questions we asked ourselves throughout this was trying to understand what the affiliation was of this group, the team we saw. We didn't get good attribution on who they work for, but we think some of the people we uncovered were some of the same people the FBI was targeting, and those folks are absolutely part of a group backed by North Korea that are tied to their missile development program.
Wow.
So the idea there is that they're looking for ways to skirt sanctions, and they're looking for for money to do that. And ransomware, crime, and payroll laundering are their three biggest ways of getting around those sanctions.
So it starts with a paycheck. Can it go from there? I mean, if they see vulnerabilities, if they see ways to probe in here and potentially ransom a company such as yours, I mean, if they were dealing with somebody maybe a little bit more naive, that's just sort of, extra benefit, if you will, to the whole thing. All right.
I think I can't tell exactly how they escalate. I've seen that the people who are interviewing at the crypto companies are a different caliber than the people who are interviewing for a full stack developer job at any other company, because I think their knowledge base is topical to crypto exchanges, and they're there to go plant backdoors or whatever they can do. We have seen that in some of these remote IT jobs, as soon as they get the job, they may not hold on to it very long. They may outsource it to somebody else as quick as they can. And that gives me a sense that they probably could step it up if they found something interesting, or they could step it down to a more commodity-based developer somewhere else to just do the work for them. And we saw that often, the handoff to other workers in India and the Philippines, and we've seen Nigeria be part of it. So that has been sort of a more traditional tactic than stepping into implant ransomware or something else.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about our audience in manufacturing and where this could go from there. When you look at intellectual property, denial of service attacks, all those things, how this could worm through, and why this is just such an interesting case study and how it can be applied to a lot of different industries and markets.
Yeah. I mean, with one of the companies, we did see, I was calling a lot of companies and disclosing to them that they had, because we could see the companies in the same laptop where we were, that they had people who were not who they said they were in the organization. That was some uncomfortable conversations, but one of them was he did have a pretty big industrial footprint, and we saw from the telemetry on the boxes that the worker had access to, at the very least, viewable access to ICS systems. And that was pretty concerning. Like, do they have any control access to it? Do they have write access to those things? And so the company had to kick off an investigation to go make sure, because they severed the guy's access immediately. He was out, but they didn't know what he had been able to touch, and they were able to determine really quickly, that he didn't have access to those industrial control systems. He just had access to the dashboards and the things that they were publishing about them. So it was a different thing. But these guys are looking for remote only jobs. And I think probably the biggest control point for people in manufacturing are to make sure that the jobs that have access to control systems and OT environments have at least a hybrid aspect to them. I mean, you can be in the field all the time and never come back to headquarters, but you're seeing somebody somewhere, and that's enough to keep these IT worker out of that pipeline for the jobs. But I think that's we haven't seen it broadly here, but I mean, I think they are interested in process IP. They are interested in living off the land, even if they'll hang out in there, even if they don't have access to it. I think they're interested in placing insiders into these companies. So, I also think that North Korea has perfected this scam, and others will repeat it and purpose build it for their own purposes. And I know manufacturers and industrial companies have had their share of that.
Absolutely. So you mentioned there was a treasure trove of information you were able to extract once you got into the farm and understood the operations there. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the other companies that they had kind of infiltrated. Was there other things that you were able to take away from having sort of a planted laptop on site? Yeah,
I mean, I think seeing the behaviors of this guy, Joe, that we talked about in the story, I mean, he was spending 8 hours a day, every day, generating resumes and applying to jobs. He was going through job boards, he was going through recruiters, he was going direct to posts, and then he was spending a lot of time just in his email responding back to those folks. When we looked around the room that we were in, we could see the affected companies, and they were all different kinds of companies. The thing that held them all together, it wasn't an industry that was more or less susceptible. It was people looking for remote IT work. They were full stack developers, they were AI engineers, they were IT administrators. They'll take jobs from the hourly to the almost 300K a year roles, and they'll put the right people in those jobs, and try to hold on to them as long as they can. So it was sort of interesting when we would call these companies. Most of them had an inkling that something was wrong with that something was wrong with that person. We didn't know what it was. You just confirmed our suspicions.
Basically, you said that these companies that you were working with had suspicions and they weren't sure. They had some questions about these individuals. What do you think maybe prevents folks from acting on some of those uncertainties that they may have about some of these folks and sort of taking it to the next level? Is it just because it's tough to find these folks? Is it a cost thing? Is it an expertise thing? What's been your experience?
The first is from the security team, there's a lot of weak signals. Little things like his laptop showed up in a weird IP range. Like he's always been working in Florida, but he showed up in Switzerland or he showed up in Nicaragua. That laptop is sitting on a VPN somewhere, and so it might be whoever the user was misconfigured that for a second and then caught themselves and came back. Like those little blips that don't raise to the point of an incident, but kind of add up over time. So they live just below the threshold of an incident. That's one. The second is, I think remote workers, they typically are in independent or individual contributor type roles. They're not managing people. They're not having to attend a lot of meetings and they're having to collaborate a lot. They're sort of like doing their job, and for the most part, if they can find someone else to do it, then it's getting done. Until there are some other things that start to be weird, like a team meet. Let's have a team bonding meeting. Let's do a monthly all hands or those kinds of things. They start to stand out as odd, but not odd enough that people are like, "What's going on with that guy?" Odd enough to be like, "He's just kind of a weirdo," and so people give a pass on weirdos sometimes, right? But the third one I think is the hardest. Is that in corporate culture, you've got to give people some chances to fix things. You can't just terminate them. And so HR and the managers that spend time being like, okay, we need to put this person on a performance improvement plan and something, and it drags on for a while. All that time, they're like, just get my paycheck. I don't really care.
Yeah,
I don't really care. So I'll say that it spans from hard to detect to generosity of spirit to people you hire to the regulatory and kind of litigation wary parts of HR who are like, we got to handle it the right way, and the right way is time consuming and is biased towards the employee being taken care of.
Yeah. You've given us a ton of takeaways here, and this has been awesome in terms of ensuring, being more secure and looking at some of these remote access employees. When you look at it from a bigger picture, and you look at sort of how AI is impacting cybersecurity, and we hear it on a lot of different fronts, what have you learned, I guess, in going through some of these processes and working with some of your customers in these types of situations? What are we learning about AI and how the bad guys are using it, and maybe how we can use it better too?
That second part's really interesting because I was telling a friend of mine about how these guys are using all these tools to get these jobs and do the jobs, and they're not even qualified to do them. And he goes, isn't that like the perfect use case for why we want to have AI for all of our people? It makes our people who are less capable more capable. I was like, oh yeah, that's a good way. That's a really positive way of thinking about it. Maybe that notion of how AI assistants give you the ability to outperform your own level of knowledge and potential is pretty interesting. I think if I think about it from a security perspective, I think there's two things really going on, and I think you're probably talking about Mythos and all the things that are happening with AI right now as an offensive tool, and I think it from the cyber perspective of the ability to discover a vulnerability and convert it into a weaponized exploit in seconds. AI is more powerful than anything we've ever seen before. I think from the ability to to defraud people. It's scaling up. It's scaling up web storefronts. It's scaling up personas. It's scaling up the deep fakes of voice and eventually video as well, that just make it so much harder to trust what you see and what you read.
Yeah.
And that I think that attack on integrity is it definitely has an attacker's advantage there.
Yeah. No, that's well said.
On the converse side of that, there are tools to help start to peel back the deep fakes and things like that. And I think some of them are really great, and people are using them in the right places to make that happen. I think the defender's advantage is, or the defender's application is more about speed. AI doesn't get tired. AI can take your worst analyst and make them your best analyst, because it can take all the wisdom of all the things you've ever found and help bolster that new analyst into higher capability. And I think it can drive automation in a way that we haven't seen before. I think that agentic AI is gonna really truly help security operations stay at the pace of the arms race and the threat.
Well, that's interesting. We haven't heard a lot of folks say that we can at least maintain pace with the bad guys. I mean, it seems like we're always chasing them. For AI to maybe put us on an equal playing field, that's exciting. That should be an interest right there, or a reason right there to seek more information and see how you can implement the AI in your own operations. So
yeah, I think the challenge is going to be remediation. I don't think enterprises can update and heal as fast as security people can find and find things.
Yeah.
So I think I think that's probably the next wave of where this needs to go is kind of autonomous ops in IT, because the business has got to evolve pretty quickly too.
Well, that's a little bit about what Mythos was all about, right? Essentially that self-remediation, quicker detection, quicker response, which is something we all need, especially in the industrial sector. The response element has been really, really challenging. And again, it's strong from your experience in working with different companies there. When it comes to those that are struggling with that response to these attacks or to these different intrusions, what advice are you offering folks?
We saw this with SOAR in the generations of security orchestration, automation, and response. Like, people would put that in, and then they didn't have good run books or good playbooks or even good instrumentation to integrate in. So now you're going to replace that with agentic AI, and you're going to have these human processes try to figure things out. And they don't constrain themselves to rules you put in them. They try to work through their objective and get there faster. If what you have are a bunch of bad practices, you're going to do those bad practices faster. So spending time making sure that your team has good run books, has good plays, knows what they're looking for, and can sort of help the agentic systems operate good at speed, I think is the thing that we, when I'm talking to companies out there, we're spending a lot of time talking about that. Not so much from my company Nisos, but just in the chatter in the industry and what we're talking about, where AI is going. So yeah, that I think is important. And then I think the other thing is this point I made. There are ways to employ AI to make your people better. The co-pilots in the SOC, we spend a lot of time AI enabling our intelligence analysts. They help with collection. It helps with sorting. It helps with trend analysis. It helps with report writing. It's an aid. It's a force multiplier to our people to help them dramatically increase their productivity. And so like that I think is also a place to spend time and effort, is making your people better. I don't think many companies that I'm talking to are having great luck replacing people with AI, but not successfully. They're trying. It's not great. They're having better luck making good people great.
That's so well said. And I like all the examples and the applications you listed there, because those are all great jumping off points, at least to get a familiarity with AI as well as an integration element to your organization. Mm-hmm. That's a great way to introduce it, and you can build from there. I just think there's a lot of pressure, especially in manufacturing right now, to get it in there and use it in so many different ways. And as a result, like you mentioned, if you're looking to get rid of people or downsize, and then you realize you made these mistakes, you're backtracking, and that gives the technology kind of a bad rap. and maybe you're going to be less or more resistant to using it in more ways that would help your organization grow. So
Yeah, I
it's
think
interesting.
industrial environments, manufacturing environments, they're so process centric. It's a great place for the AI to learn because sometimes those processes are only understood by the people who built them, and those processes were built maybe 40 years ago. So like having AI extract what actually is happening is a pretty interesting exercise. I haven't seen that be one of the leading use cases, but I think it's fascinating. And then as manufacturing becomes more digital, with the use of robots and all kinds of other things like that, and we're seeing some pretty cool applications of autonomous systems inside manufacturing and logistics facilities. That gets really exciting. Now we're talking like Star Trek for manufacturing and and rapid modernization. That's even, and that's not a cyber thing, but it's pretty interesting to think about it from a security and resiliency standpoint. How do you make sure that all these new applications and new technologies are safe?
No, digital transformation process is ongoing. It never stops for sure. But what's interesting is it always comes back to the people. You mentioned AI not being a people replacer. You described Nisos as a human risk management company. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit more about Nisos, what you guys are up to, and what you offer maybe the industrial sector.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we're excited about what we do every day. Our team is a mission focused organization. When we talk about human risk, we're really talking about two things, which are risks to people and risks by people. And
Yeah.
and so it is adjacent to cyber and security, but it intertwines. When we're talking about risks to people, we're talking about things like executive digital protection and the ways to understand the digital footprint of high visibility people and how to reduce the opportunity of bad people who can do physical harm to those folks through their digital footprints. And then it comes to risk by people. We do a lot of work in insider threat, like we did with the North Korean IT worker, and workforce fraud, workplace fraud, and due diligence. So helping to connect that when you're building a trusted workforce, you trust your people so much you don't want to let insiders in. So how do you keep them out? How do you find them when they're in? How do you make sure that the workforce you have is safe and protected from outside influence who want to do the company or each other harm? So we do all that through amazing analysts and amazing tools that help bring together the power of open source intelligence. All the stuff on social media, fringe social media, the deep and dark web, and all these other different data sets that are out there, they can help bring together a picture to help protect people.
Well, it's definitely needed. And I think it's what's interesting. What I like to ask, we've talked about stuff that you think is coming down in terms of forecasting different trends and technologies. So the other question I like to ask in wrapping these things up is, you're exposed to all these bad things going on in cybersecurity and all the different challenges there. Quite literally, how do you sleep at night? What gives you some solace or some respite that we're going to be okay?
I got into security almost 20 years ago, and I got in because it felt like it was important. So every day I felt like I was making a difference, but I also felt like it was unsolved. And I think the space we're seeing right now is that every time we get pretty good at figuring out how to solve an identity challenge or a security operations challenge or cloud security challenge, the next wave of technology and innovation come along and challenge us to think differently.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are with AI. I don't sleep great thinking about all the different abuse cases of AI.
Yeah.
I really do worry about my kids. I worry about just the online footprint of harms that are out there. I worry about the fact that there hasn't been a single sci-fi movie I've ever seen that painted a great future enabled by AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have to look to, I mean, I think generally I'm an optimist at heart. And so I look for how do we get value out of this? How do our clients get value out of it? How do we make sure that we are out there helping people recognize the risks so they do something about them before they turn into harms? And so that's I think that's the balance of like an area where we feel responsible, we feel like we want to do something that's important, that protects people and trying to stay out ahead of what the next thing is going to be. It's never going to end. It's great job security for all of us in the industry. And I think you've got to, if you don't have an optimistic view of it, it can get dark fast. But if you do, then you can, figure out ways to be solution oriented.
Well, and I think you've mentioned it a couple of times. The progress is there. We can look at where we've come from, and I think what you're talking about there too, in terms of the recognition, that's so important, and to share more and more of that information. That's why I was so grateful that you were able to be willing to come on and talk about your experience with this North Korean situation, so we can share that so other people can learn from it. I think that's one of the more positive things that I take away from doing the podcast.
That's part of why we did the work, by the way, was we thought it was important for the community to learn about it. It was something we were seeing, and we thought, man, what if we could just break this open so people could really, really roll around in it? So I appreciate the chance to be able to tell the story, because I think the more people who hear it, the more valuable it is.
Thanks, Ryan. And for more information on Nisos, you can check them out at Nisos, that's NISOS.com. I'd also like to thank you for joining us, and to catch up on past episodes, you can go to manufacturing.net, IEN.com, or MBTmag.com. You can also check Security Breach out wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple, Amazon, and Overcast. And if you have a cybersecurity story or topic that you'd like to have us explore on Security Breach, you can reach me at jeff@IEN.com. For Ryan LaSalle, I'm Jeff Ranke, and this is Security Breach.